Hello and welcome back to Hop to the Top. Hope you're all doing well today and you're looking forward to one final season with Grasshoppers. Yeah, that's right. We've got one final season left at the club. That's it. After that, we're finished with the Grasshoppers, moving on to different things. And to be fair, we've done pretty well, I think. When we started out with this save, we had 5 clear goals to try and achieve. Number 1 was get Grasshoppers back into the Swiss Super League, ideally at the third time of asking. And we did that. We did that very easily. We then rebuilt the squad and got Grasshoppers back into the upper echelons of Swiss football, qualifying for European football in the process. Again, we did that pretty quickly too. And we also built a team capable of winning the Swiss Super League by obviously winning Swiss Super Leagues in there as well, which is fantastic stuff. So those first 3 we did pretty well, I've got to say. Number 4 was a little trickier. Get far in European competitions to build up Switzerland's European coefficient. And eventually we got there, winning a Europa League along the way, which was absolutely fantastic. Number 5 though, we've partly done it, I would argue. Now, we haven't won a Champions League yet. Obviously, we've got one final chance to try and do it this season. And also, the other part of that was to make Swiss domestic clubs some of the best in Europe. And I would argue we have done that to an extent. Because if we go on to this globe icon here, and then we go across to Europe, along the top there, Europe, and go to rankings, and we want nation club coefficient. I mean, club coefficient is up to 6, but there's something else. Club list. No, club coefficient, that's what we want, because we are apparently the 10th best team in Europe as it stands right now in terms of coefficient ratings, but I'd argue that that means we are the 10th best team in all of Europe. I know some of you will argue and say that, Tom, having Grasshoppers in 10th doesn't count towards making Swiss domestic clubs some of the best in Europe because there's only one team up there. Well, actually, that's where you're slightly wrong, because if we look down here, Basel are in 28th, which I think is pretty impressive. To be in the top 30 of all European clubs is pretty impressive. So I'd argue that that goes towards that part of the criteria as well. I've not scrolled down much further, but Young Boys are in 37th. They're very, very high up. So I'd argue that's pretty good going as well. I don't think we'll see another Swiss club in there, although Luzern are 50th, apparently. Although saying that, Motherwell are 49th, so perhaps that doesn't say all that much. But to have 4 clubs inside of Europeans' top 50, I would argue is really impressive and makes us some of the best domestic clubs in all of Europe. So I think we've partly ticked off number 5. If we can win a Champions League, we can fully tick it off. So that's the aim, obviously, for this season. I do have a little bit of bad news about this coming season, though. Now, obviously, I said to you, we're going to try and put everything into this season. We're going to try and sign as many players as possible, trying to do some never transfers where we offer like £1 million up front, but say we'll pay £50 million in the future, trying to get deals done like that. And we did have some deals accepted for that. However, the board decided that they didn't want me to do that, essentially. I'll put some screenshots up on the screen right now of an idea. I think Troy Parrott is a screenshot I got one of. £60 million, about £10 million up front, 50 in the future. They accepted that, but the board cancelled it because they didn't think it was financially viable, which does make sense because obviously I won't be playing with it anymore, but the game doesn't know that, obviously, so it thinks I'm going to send the club into financial ruin, so won't let me do these kind of transfers. So on the transfer front, it's been very, very difficult. If we go to our finance, we've got £42 million in the bank, which is quite a lot. We had an original transfer budget of £25 million and a transfer budget left now of £8.6 million. So we have spent a bit of money. You can see here, though, wage budget, we are over it by £16,000, 1.2 million per week, which is a lot, but obviously it's not quite the money that we need to be attracting the big players to the club. The players that we want are, 4-star players and above sort of thing. Anything less than that is kind of not really improving on what we've got. So if we go to search for players and go to just the general player search, you'll see that instantly there's not all that many 4-star players. There's loads of 3.5 stars we can sort of look to bring in, but all the 4-star players that are interested in joining the club, even ones that aren't interested in joining the club, you'll see that they're upwards of £25 million plus. Those that do have minimum fee release clauses, like this guy who's Brazilian, he's not actually better than Dorival. We've got Dorival, who is better than him, so we don't actually need to sign him. He's also outside of Europe, so that doesn't help us with our European quota for players. Further to that, you'll also see that player wages are extortionately high, 160, 180, 185, £250,000 a week. For these massive players that we want to bring in to improve the squad, we have to be paying top dollar. Another example of this is Felipe Cruz. Now, he was on the transfer list at Inter Milan, and I thought for one final season, we'll sign Felipe Cruz, bring him back to the club where he's played most of his career in this version of the game, just always on loan. So we put the bid in for about £10 million. They accepted it because on the transfer list. He came back. He's currently on £235,000 a week at AC Milan. Guess how much he wanted from us? All right, guess how much he wanted? That's right, £300,000 per week. That represents a quarter of our wage budget. So that's the type of thing that we're up against. He's not even that good, Felipe Cruz, but he wants 300k per week. If we want to bring in those top quality players, we've got to pay them that top dollar now, and we just can't afford it. That's the issue. We just can't afford these players. So for this final season, we haven't made that many transfers. We haven't sold anyone either. Now, Alex Silva-Reis has been the most likely player to go because he actually has a minimum fee release clause in his deal, his contract that is, of only £23.5 million. He insisted on that when he signed the deal last season. So many clubs have met it. Barcelona, Man City, Man United, they've all met it. But he keeps rejecting the contracts, but won't sign a new contract with us because he says he's not happy at the club, but keeps rejecting contracts elsewhere. It's a bit of a weird one, but I'm very happy because it does mean he's still at the club and he's a very good right back. So as I say, we haven't really lost anyone, which is kind of good to be fair, I've got to say. We did have one guy on the Patreon who's left the club. He's just, I didn't mean it. We always try and keep all the Patreon players, but Tobias Kriens has gone to St. Gallen. I didn't mean for that to happen. I just kind of forgot to offer him a contract because I was skipping through some news items and then he went to St. Gallen. So we'll keep an eye on Tobias Kriens at St. Gallen this season. We have brought a couple of players in, though. You may be familiar with this first particular player, Jefferson Lerma, £9 million in from Roma. He is a box-to-box midfielder. That's what we're going to be using him as predominantly. Because we haven't been able to spend tons of money on wingers, and I don't really think the wingers we've got at the moment are up to it, we are going to predominantly play with the attacking midfielder system this season, which means that we do have to put players like Lo Celso and Randy Schneider into the attacking midfield. So we needed another central midfielder to come in, and a good one at that, and Jefferson Lerma is very much that good player that we needed for this particular season. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he plays this season in that box-to-box midfielder role, which I think he should do brilliantly. To help him out just a little bit, we've also brought in Felix Albert from Barcelona on loan this particular season. He's another central midfielder that can come in and sort of help cover in that particular position. Won't play too much, but should be pretty decent cover for us. So Felix Albert, also welcome to the club. He's got some very, very good mental attributes, I've got to say, after playing a little bit of his trade recently all over the place in Barcelona, then into Bournemouth and West Brom in the Premier League. Jefferson Lerma, by the way, has spent his entire career pretty much at Bournemouth before going to Roma for a couple of seasons, not really making a massive impact there before coming along to us. So that's if you're interested in Jefferson Lerma. We've also signed for £3.9 million another striker, Michael Durast. He's come in as a backup striker and keeps getting worse and worse and worse current ability as the coaches start to assess him. He looks okay, but he's just sort of backup, so don't expect to see him too much. And then after that, we've also brought in another chap on loan, a guy that I cannot pronounce, but he's cover on that right-hand side of the wing in case we possibly need cover on that position. We're probably not going to use wingers that much this season, so don't expect to see him too much either. So I know it's quite disappointing this final season with transfers after, you know, loads of money being spent in previous years. This one has been... it's been a bit rubbish, I've got to say, and I suppose it's a bit more of a consolidation. We just can't afford it according to the board. We would be spending upwards of £100 million if they'd let me, but they won't let me because the game's stupid. What it means is we've got to fight for a Champions League this season with essentially what we've got pretty much, and we're pretty much used to what we've got. However, I think this team is capable of a semi-final. I still think that now. Obviously, last season we went out in the first knockout round, but the season before that, we beat PSG in the first knockout round, and we came agonisingly close to getting to the semi-finals after we lost to Bayern Munich. So I do think this team is good enough to get to a semi-final at the very least, and I think, given some good, helpful draws this season, we might be able to do it. So obviously, we'll jump straight into things with the Champions League draw right now. We'll go and draw... we're obviously a first seed because we are one of the best teams in Europe, as you've seen before. So we're going to draw the first teams and see which group we start off in. We're starting off in Group H. So out of the teams in the second seeds, which seems to be stronger than the first seeds, I would say, quite a lot of the time, I'd have a preference of Porto because they've got the lowest coefficient, but maybe a Dortmund. But any other team, I'd be a little bit concerned about having. Dortmund have gone straight into Group A, so we're not going to get them. We've missed out on the big boys like PSG and Real Madrid. Porto, unfortunately, go into Group E, which means we've got a choice of City, Barcelona, or Chelsea, who knocked us out last season. I don't know who I'd want. Maybe Chelsea, because we came pretty close to them. Instead, we get Barcelona, which is going to be particularly tough, I would imagine. Although if they're only a second seed, perhaps they have dropped down a little bit. Third seed sides, then, of the teams that are there, I'd back us against any of those nowadays. I'd back us against any of them, but ideally we'd want a Krasnodar or a Benfica. Benfica would be quite good because they're our parent club still, technically speaking, even though we are much better than them. Out of all those teams, though, we didn't get Benfica. We got Schalke, who I think we might have beaten before. I can't quite remember. We'll double check this later on. Of the final seeds, Espanyol, we can't get them. But again, any of these clubs, I wouldn't mind too much. Also, very good to see that Basel and Young Boys both qualified for the group stages, which is great. In the end, we are getting Dynamo Kiev, who again, I think we might have played them before. So that's our Champions League group. We'll do those Champions League games. We'll start them off next episode because I want to do the Kriens games in today's episode just because I want to start off with the Swiss Super League for a change. So obviously we have played a few fixtures already to get to this stage of the game. So I'll just talk you through those very, very quickly. We aren't going to have an unbeaten season again, unfortunately, because we have lost to Basel 2-0 in there. But every other game has been a win. We started off with a 2-1 victory against St. Gallen and Randy Schneider with both those goals before Dorival and Harry Kane both scored goals in 1-0 victories over Luzerne and Lugano. We lost 2-0 to Basel. The less said about that, the better. Before we won 6-0 against a club that I've not heard of before, Black Stars Basel. Won 6-0 against them in the Swiss Cup first round, so that was a good run out for the boys. Before we hammered Zurich 2-0, technically at home, in front of a packed capacity crowd with Lo Celso and Thad Davis getting themselves on the score sheet. So as I say, in today's episode, we're going to be doing the Kriens game just because I want to do some Swiss Super League instead for you. Just as well, we didn't talk about the table earlier on, did I? We are top of the table despite losing to Basel because they've drawn a game in there as well as losing one. So that's interesting. We're still top of the table, 12 points ahead of Basel on 10 and Young Boys on 9. And Zurich on 9 points instead, which is quite good to see. So in goal today, we do have Kalas with a backline of Dorival, Haroldinho Bunt, Sterigu and Thad Davis, who is starting ahead of Silver Reese right now. Jefferson Lerma and Pedro start in the midfield today. That midfield partnership is shaping up quite nicely with Schneider, Lo Celso and Nunes in behind Harry Kane as the lead striker today. Obviously, no wingers today, and it was mentioned I should probably see if I can change like these positions to be a bit more going out wing. It says get further forward there. We could move it to stay wider, and I feel like that could be something that we look to do, because that might just help us with a little bit more width. So we'll get these guys, Nunes and Schneider, to stay a little wider. That way, I think we might be able to get a little bit more width into the squad, and that might just help us out that little bit more. So that's what I'm happy with. That's a team. Let's submit it and go into the match. Right then, kickoff is upon us here today, so I'm looking forward to it. Like, I want to see a good beating of Kriens. I want to put on a good show for you guys out there as well. At the moment, our attacking midfielders are playing very, very narrow, so this get wider trait seems to be not working right now. As Jefferson Lerma on the ball back to Haroldinho Bunt. Can he get it up wide? No, he can't, but gets it central into Nunes. Nunes can surely put it out wide here if he needs to. He doesn't. Takes on the entire Kriens team himself pretty much. Gets it into the middle, and Schneider puts it in the back of the net. His first shot, I think, was blocked, so no assist there for Nunes. But Randy Schneider with his third goal of the season, I should say, his first since his 2 goals on the opening day of the season. Yeah, the first shot blocked, so Nunes, no assist for him, but in the back of the net, beautiful. Dorival on the ball, then getting it out wide. Can he put a good cross into the middle? He puts it into Pedro instead, who shoots from the edge of the area just about. Good save from the Kriens goalkeeper, though. He was forced to make that, otherwise that was going in the back of the net. Nunes' corner, nearly straight onto the head of Sterigu, but doesn't quite get into the back of the net. Thad Davis puts it back up towards Nunes, who can put a good ball into the middle. Unfortunately, looks like he was just offside. Do I think this is the best Grasshopper side we've ever had? Maybe. It might be, as Kriens have literally just equalised. What I would change about this Grasshopper side is, obviously, I'd want Bottles back, obviously, but we did get £115 million from him, which has funded other players who have helped bolster other positions. Like I think our back line, maybe swap out Sterigu for Ross McQuaid, and that is, and obviously Thad Davis swaps out for Silver East. That is the best back line we have ever had. Pedro is probably the best central midfielder that we've ever had, but obviously Jefferson Lerma isn't quite up there because the other better players have moved into that attacking midfield. It's difficult to weigh up. I'd say it's definitely up there with one of the best starting lineups that we've ever had. If we put out a full strength lineup, it probably is one of the best we've ever had, but we can't get any better than Bottles, really. I think Bottles was just an anomaly. Half-time, though, and it's only 1-1, which does suggest that the current lineup we've got is not particularly good because we should be absolutely battering Kriens. Issue is, I've probably not put it onto attacking. That's probably part of the issue. Let's show some passion as well. Hopefully that will help us just go forward a bit more, push forward a bit more in this second half. Dorival on the ball, plays it in towards Haroldinho Bunt, out towards Jefferson Lerma, up to Nunes. Nunes can get it out wide. No, decides to take it on himself instead. Once again, shoots, saved by the keeper, but that was a nice little attacking move from Nunes. I've got to say, Nunes is a better player on paper in terms of attributes than Alex Smith. But for me, Alex Smith was the OG as Kriens have just taken the lead. As I was saying though, Alex Smith was the OG. He was the original wonder kid we had in this safe. He was absolutely fantastic and has been his entire time. It just Núñez was available for a very cheap price and was better. And we thought if we want to progress in the Champions League, we've got to get someone. And I love Alex Smith to death as Kriens. What is going on here? How are they doing this to us? I don't think you've seen us lose a league game on an episode for three seasons or so, maybe. And yet today we are being absolutely outdone by Kriens, who, to be fair, are matching us a little bit, I've got to say. Perhaps getting Schneider and Núñez to play a bit wider isn't really working out for us. What we're going to do then is go against my philosophy this season and move back to some wingers, okay? So Capitano on for... Yeah, put him on for Núñez. We'll put Schneider in the middle because he's on a very, very good rating. And Selmy on that left-hand side. Let's try this one out then. Let's see if this actually makes a difference as Harry Kane puts his header over the bar. You know what? I've got to say, a little bit shocked at how today's game has sort of panned out. I wasn't really expecting this. I was expecting us to win like 5 or 6-0. And yet we're 3-1 down to a Kriens side who at the start of this episode hadn't won a game yet this season. And now they're beating us, which isn't great, as Thad Davis gets the ball in towards Harry Kane. Back out to Thad Davis. Thad Davis across to Anselmi. Anselmi to put the ball into the middle, into Capitano. Cleared only as far as Thad Davis, though. Come on, lads. We've got 20 minutes to go. Harry Kane, Anselmi. I think it's offside. Click off Harry Kane's head first, and then Anselmi it's going to VAR, but I'm pretty sure that's offside, unfortunately. Yeah, it's been given as offside. Let's go on to very attacking then, and let's say get creative out there. Anselmi, who's been everywhere since he's been on the pitch, gets the ball out towards Schneider, into the middle. Harry Kane putting it over. I mean, the change in formation may have worked out a little bit, because we've now had 20 shots to Kriens' 7, so perhaps this formation is a little bit better, but the players we've got there aren't so good, and I've put my eggs in the basket of not signing wingers and trying to improve the midfield a little bit, even though we've not really done massive amounts of that. Thad Davis into Anselmi, who finally does get an actual goal, his second of the season, and now we've got 10 minutes to try and get back in this. Although that 10 minutes is ticking by very quickly, and it's turned into 5 minutes as Jefferson Lerma puts a great ball through to Randy Schneider. Come on, into the middle. It's cleared, unfortunately. Okay. Are we about to lose to Kriens? Is this literally about to happen? The first loss on camera for a couple of seasons, and it's to Kriens of all teams. Not like not a Basel, not a Young Boys, not even like a Zurich in a derby. To Kriens, who are literally like a village side as far as I'm aware. It's not a great look, is it, I've got to say, as we do win the ball back as Jefferson Lerma collects that loose ball up to Anselmi. Anselmi racing forward in behind the defence is making a case for himself to be starting on that left wing or up front, I've got to say. He's been playing very, very well. I think we're about to see maybe a red card for a Kriens player, perhaps. I'm sure that's what the highlight's for. Why else would it start on a free kick like this? I think the referee's going to send him off. Only a warning. Okay, so maybe Schneider is going to load this one into the area and he's going to put it in the back of the net. Schneider, Sterigu can't get on the end of it. I think that's going to be it, I think. Free kick to Kriens, but apparently offside for some reason. And I can't quite believe we've lost. Okay, well, that wasn't part of the plan whatsoever. That's the first loss you've seen on camera for years. It's only our third loss in the last 2 seasons or so. You hate to see it. We also lose top space to Basel, but only by a singular point. So, I mean, hopefully we improve in time for next episode. Although next episode, we're going to do the Schalke and Dynamo Kiev games in the Champions League. I'm very keen not to lose on an episode again, so that's why I'm going to skip the first Barcelona game. But we will do Barcelona later on in the season with group stages. But for now, Schalke and Dynamo Kiev coming up next episode. So, despite the loss, despite the weird transfer window situation, for the last season, let's get behind the boys and try and have a fantastic season at that and try and get as far as possible in the Champions League and everything like that. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please do drop a like on the video for me and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. And I'll see you next time. Have a great one. Goodbye.